guys, it's El-Bethel and I'm back with a new podcast on the 48 Laws of Power as promised. Today's podcast is about the introduction to the 48 Laws of Power, why you need to follow the principles of power, and why you need to gain more power in your day-to-day activities. So, we can start. The feeling of having no power over events and people is generally unbearable. When one feels helpless, he feels miserable. No one wants less power. Everyone wants more. However, in the world today, it is dangerous to seem power hungry. That is, being overt with your power moves. We have to seem fair and decent. So we need to be subcongenial, yet cunning, democratic, yet devious. This game of constant duplicity most resembles the power dynamic that existed in the scheming world of the old aristocratic court. Throughout history, a court has always formed itself around the person in power, be it king, queen, emperor, or any other leader. The courtiers who filled this court were in a delicate position. They had to serve their masters, but if they seemed too fond or carried favor too obviously, the other courtiers would act against them. Attempts to win their masters' favors had to be subtle. The court was supposed to represent the height of civilization and refinement. Violent or overt power moves were frowned upon. Courtiers worked silently and secretly amongst those who used force. The courtiers, while appearing the paragon of elegance, they had to outwit and divert their own opponents in the subtlest of ways. The perfect courtier got his way through seduction, charm, deception, and subtle strategy, always planning several moves ahead. Life in the court was a never-ending game that required constant vigilance and tactical thinking. It was civilized. Today, we face a similar paradox to that of the courtier. Everything must appear civilized, decent, democratic, and fair. But if we play by those rules too strictly, we are crushed by those around us who are not so foolish. Niccolo Machiavelli, the great Renaissance and courtier, wrote, "Any man who tries to be good all the time is bound to come to ruin among the great number who are not good." Our world today, as the court imagines itself, the pinnacle of fairness, yet the same ugly emotions still stir within us, as they have forever. The game is the same. Outwardly, you must seem to respect the niceties, but inwardly, unless you are a fool, you learn quickly to be prudent, as Napoleon advised. If, like the courtiers of time gone, you can master the art of indirection, seduction, charm, deceive, and subtly outmaneuver your opponents, you'll attain the heights of power. You'll be able to make people bend to your will without realizing what you have done, and in case they realize, they will never resist nor resent you. To some people, the notion of consciously playing power games, no matter how indirect, seems evil, asocial, or a relic of the past. You must beware of such people, for while they express such opinions outwardly, they are often among the most adept players at power. For example, they will always display their weakness and lack of power as a moral virtue. But true powerfulness, without any motive of self-interest, will not publicize its weakness to gain sympathy or. Another strategy of the supposed non-player is to demand equality in every area of life. But if, to avoid the taint of power, you attempt to treat everyone equally and fair, you will confront the problem that some people do certain things better than others. Treating everyone equally means ignoring their differences, elevating the less skillful, and suppressing those who excel. Again, many of those who believe this way are actually deploying another power strategy, redistributing people's rewards in a way that they determine. Another way of avoiding the game will be perfect honesty and straightforwardness. But being perfectly honest will inevitably hurt and insult a great many people, some of whom will choose to injure you in return. No one will see your honest statement as completely objective and free of some personal motivation. And they will be right. In truth, the use of honesty is indeed a power strategy, intended to convince people of one's noble, good-hearted, selfless character. Those who claim to be non-players may affect an air of naivety to protect them from the accusation that they are after power. Beware again, for the appearance of naivety can be an ineffective means of deceit. Law 21 of power says, seem dumber than your mark, and even genuine naivety is not free of the snares of power. Genuinely innocent people may still be playing for power and are often horribly effective at the game, since they are hindered by reflection. Once again, those who make a show of innocence are the least innocent of all. You can recognize these supposedly non-players by the way they flaunt their moral qualities, their piety, their exquisite sense of justice. But since all of us hunger for power, and almost all of our actions are aimed at gaining it, the non-players are merely throwing dust in our eyes, distracting us from their power plays with their air of moral superiority. If the world is like a giant scheming court and you're trapped inside, there's no use in trying to opt out of the game. That will only render you powerless, and powerlessness will make you miserable. Instead of struggling against the inevitable, instead of arguing and whining and feeling guilty, it is far better to excel at power. In fact, the better you are at dealing with power, the better friend, lover, husband, wife, and person you become. By mastering the 48 laws of power, you spare others the pain that comes from bungling with power by playing with fire without knowing its properties. Learning the game of power requires a certain way of looking at the world, a shifting of perspective. It takes efforts and years of practice, for much of the game may not come naturally. Certain basic skills are required, and once you master these skills, you'll be able to apply the laws of power more easily. The most important of these skills and power's crucial foundation is the ability to master your emotions. Emotions cloud reason, and if you can't see the situation clearly, you can't prepare for and respond to it with any degree of control. Anger is the most destructive of emotional responses, for it clouds your vision the most. It also has a ripple effect that invariably makes situations less controllable and heightens your enemy's resolve. There are no principles, there are only events. There's no good and bad, there are only circumstances. The superior man espouses events and circumstances in order to guide them. Love and affection are also potentially destructive, in that they blind you to the often self-serving interests of those whom you least suspect of playing a power game. You cannot repress anger or love or avoid feeling them, and you should not try, but you should be careful about how you express them, and most important, they should never influence your plans and strategies in any way. Related to mastering your emotions is the ability to distance yourself from the present moment and think objectively about the past and future. You must be able to look in both directions at once. You must continuously look to the future and to the past. For the future, the motto is no days an alert. Nothing should catch you by surprise because you are constantly imagining problems before they arise. Instead of spending your time dreaming of your plan's happy ending, you must work on calculating every possible permutation and pitfall that might emerge in it. The further you see, the more steps ahead you plan, the more powerful you become. You look to the past not to remember past hurts or bear grudges. That will only curb your power. You look at the past to learn from those who came before you. You then look closer at hand to your actions and to those of your friends. This is the most vital school you can learn from because it comes from personal experience. You begin by examining the mistakes you have made in the past. You analyze them in terms of the 48 laws of power and extract from them a lesson and an oath. You declare that you shall never repeat such a mistake or shall never fall into such a trap again. Power requires the ability to play with appearances. Deception and masquerade should not be seen as ugly or immoral. All human interactions require deception on many levels. Deception is a developed art of civilization and the most potent weapon in the game of power. Playing with appearances and mastering arts of deception are among the aesthetic pleasures of life. They are also key components in the acquisition of power. If deception is the most potent weapon in your arsenal, then patience in all things is your crucial shield. Like mastering your emotions, patience is a skill. It does not come naturally, but nothing about power is natural. Power is more godlike than anything in the natural world, and patience is the supreme virtue of the gods, who have nothing but time. Impatience, on the other hand, only makes you look weak. It's a principal impediment to power. Power is essentially amoral, and one of the most important skills to acquire is the ability to see circumstances rather than good or evil. Power is a game, and in games, you do not judge your opponents by their intentions, but by the effect of their actions. You measure their strategy and their power by what you can see and feel. It's only natural for people to cover up their actions with all kinds of justifications, always assuming that they have acted out of goodness. It is a game. Your opponent sits opposite you. Both of you behave as gentlemen or ladies, observing the rules of the game and taking nothing personally. You play with the strategy and you observe your opponent's moves with as much calmness as you can master. Half of your mastery of power comes from what you do not do, what you do not allow yourself to get dragged into. You must learn to judge all things by what they cost you. Perhaps you'll attain your goal, and a worthy goal at that, but at what price? Never waste valuable time or mental peace of mind on the affairs of others. That is too high a price to pay. Power is a social game. To learn and master it, you must develop the ability to study and understand people. To be a master player, you must also be a master psychologist. You must recognize motivations and see through the cloud of dust with which people surround their actions. An understanding of people's hidden motives is the single greatest piece of knowledge you can have in acquiring power. It opens up endless possibilities of deception, seduction, and manipulation. Never discriminate as to whom you study and whom you trust. Never trust anyone completely and study everyone, including friends and loved ones. Finally, you must learn always to take the indirect route to power. Your moves must be planned and developed in the least obvious way. By training yourself to be indirect, you can thrive in the modern court, appearing the paragon of decency while being the consummate manipulator. Consider the 48 Laws of Power a kind of handbook on the arts of indirection. The laws are based on the writings of men and women who have studied and mastered the game of power. The 48 Laws of Power are the distillation of this accumulated wisdom, gathered from the writings of the most illustrious strategists, Sun Tzu, Clausewitz, statesmen such as Bismarck, Talleyrand, courtiers such as Castiglione and Gratian, seducers such as Ninon de L'Enclos and Casanova, and con artists such as Sailor Kid, also known as Whale in history. The laws have a simple premise. Certain actions almost always increase one's power, while others decrease it and even ruin us. The laws are timeless and definitive. Stay with me, support my YouTube channel as I bring more content for you on the 48 Laws of Power. My next podcast will be on the 48 Laws of Power summary of the 48 Laws of Power. That will be from law 1 to law number 48. Like, subscribe, and share the link of this YouTube video to others which may be of help in the workplace or at school, or for those who want to be leaders. Thank you for the support. Get me to 200 subscribers. I'm currently at 120 approximately. Thank you.